Hi there. Welcome to BWI Live. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We are here to talk about practice. And Nate, you know I love a good schedule. Like, when it comes to my work and keeping things straight, I love to have a good rhythm. That way we all know what's about to happen and nobody gets surprised. But practice has been on Wednesdays, it's been on Thursdays, it's been on Saturdays. It's going to be on Tuesday this week. So here's what's happening. We're going to be breaking down what we saw last week and also previewing what we're expecting to see tonight, all in the span of one show. So some of this stuff, it's going to feel old, but this is our first chance to talk to you about it here on the BWI Live Show. At least it's going to feel old in my head, but I mean, unless you're a subscriber at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, this is going to be all new information because we haven't had a chance to talk about it. So, Nate, hi. Welcome to the show.
Hello, T. Frank. There's nothing that I love more than listening to you glean actual insights out of 15 minutes of running backs running through pads. And
it was a little tougher this week. I'll be honest.
Patterns.
It was a little bit tougher this week. There was an extra amount of individual work that it was a little more, and I don't mean it what I said this afterwards was, wow, that was extra nothing this week. And then they surprised us at the end with a live period, which I always appreciate. So we're going to be getting into a couple of things today when it comes to how we're going to talk about where we are in training camp because of all of this movement of when practices are and when we get this information to you. Nate's going to give you a lay of the land. That's going to be one of the things we do of like, where are we in camp? What's coming up next? When do we learn some of this information? That's all coming up on today's show, including Between the Lines, James Franklin talking, and more shade towards former Nittany Lions. Maybe, I don't know. Like, that's why we have Nate for Between the Lines. Stan Drayton said some things, and we're going to talk about it. But, of course, today's show is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. They carry all the gear you need from top brands, all at prices you'll love. And now shopping at Academy is more convenient than ever. They offer free assembly on on-site purchases of most bikes and grills, plus free and easy curbside pickup on academysports.com orders. So, Nate, the first thing we have to get to is the very important AP poll. Top 25, Nate. Penn State is number 2. So now we officially know when somebody says Penn State football, and then in parentheses, it's going to say 2-3 next to their name. They are now second in the AP poll, third in the coaches poll. And Nate, I need you to dig deep and give me some unique, bespoke, individual thoughts about Penn State being ranked second in the AP poll.
Well, I think clearly anything other than losing the national championship to Texas would be an abomination. Just
an abomination.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. You know how I like to joke. Look, it's fine. I think it's interesting how close they were to right there. 4 votes, I think, short of, I think Texas had 23 first place votes. Penn State had 22. And in they tally them all up. I think it was 4 total votes separating Penn State from that preseason number 1 overall ranking. I'm surprised a little bit, but I've been surprised all offseason, right? I when ESPN first came out in the spring and had Penn State as a preseason number, right? A post-spring preseason number 1. Yeah. That surprised me a little bit. I think that there are still some things to resolve. Look, bottom line, and I'm Captain Beat a Dead Horse over here, but like, I would like to witness with my eyes Kyron Hudson and Trevor Pena catching a lot of footballs in traffic, right? Contested catches. Consistently. Like I would like to see that in the Big Ten, for Trevor Pena, the transition and the translation from Syracuse to Penn State and playing in the Big Ten, and for Kyron Hudson, an increased role, right? A different role. I would like to see it from. It just feels to me like such an important, for all of the other things that I think there is every reason to say that Penn State is among, if not the best team in the country this year. The offensive line holds that water. Drew Aller holds that water. Katron, Nick, right? Like the offense has a ton of those things, and I'm maybe more bullish on the defense than other people would anticipate. I think that Jim Knowles is going to step in and be fine. I think that they have talent at the right spots for his defense to come in and seamlessly be very good. I just think that's a lot of respect for something that was really not where it needed to be for them to win a national championship last year at receiver. And I'm not sure it's there this year, but we'll see.
So, Eastern Iowa is with you. He says number 2 is overhyped. I may agree with top 10, though. He may. I don't know if he or she. They may agree. The tone is coming off very Eeyore here from Eastern Iowa. # not number 2. But this is consistent. This is consistent with their presence here in the chat. But just agreeing with you, Nate. Like the wet blanket effect is truly there for Penn State football. But here's I guess how I view these things. This is an on-paper test. And I don't think we've seen Penn State on paper coming into the season having this level of completeness as a team. And spoiler alert, I'm going to agree with you about the defense later on in the show and some of the things I've observed, some of the things I've noticed about even perceived weaknesses on this team. So on paper, Penn State is one of the best teams in the country. And a lot of this, Nate, is based on hype and name recognition. So people know at this point, Nick Singleton, Katron Aller, Denai Dennis-Sutton, and the rest of the class of 2022. We know those players. Their star players, minus Abdul Carter, came back. And so, number 1 team. But like there is some truth and some validity to that where we see these teams that are, pretty well balanced and have pretty good overall talent depth and high-end abilities, all those things. Like it does feel like there is this coming together of elements that it feels valid. I think it's fair. I disagree with some of the people that don't think that's fair. We don't know what we don't know about some of these other schools, right? So that's also part of this is there are less new elements for Penn State than there are for other schools. I
think that's fair. It's just a question of the elements that that are coming back. How excellent are they? Look, like some of this is just dumb because it doesn't matter at all. But if you could throw that graphic back up for me to take a gander, you could go down to 8, 9 before you're out of teams that you think could win a national championship out of that group.
Yeah.
Right? I think you could make a case for just about any one of those teams. Miami might be a bridge too far, but you can see a path for any of those teams to certainly get to the playoff and then to make a run within it, which to me is another, that's what is going to make college football great moving forward is this expanded playoff that you're going to see those teams or a lot of those teams in the playoff and they're going to play each other and they're going to battle and see who wins. And it's going to be great. It's going to be a very entertaining college football season. I cannot wait for it to get started so that we can stop talking about the resume of a team that is 0-0, just like every other team in college football right now.
17 days or something like 18 days, something like that before we get the big showdown versus Nevada. And of course, Penn State is 2 in the AP poll. They're 3 in the coaches poll, and they're number 1 in your hearts if you're a Penn State fan, or they're number 1 living rent-free in your head if you're Charisse, who's here and says Penn State should not be ranked ahead of Ohio State. Charisse, our resident Ohio State fan, who's in the chat. And I'm obviously having some loving fun here with you all, by the way. We're having a good time. Just so nobody gets, I hope the smile and like the happiness that's coming through my voice means we're all like, this is all nonsense, right? Like we're having a good time.
Can I tell you, I had the best interaction. I will not go into detail, but I was picking up a prescription last night, and there was a sign that said go straight to the kiosk and put your information in. And as I did that, one of the pharmacists or the woman that was working at the front immediately, "Sir, that's not open. That is not open." And I was like, well, I got a little head cold, right? Something's going on. And I was just like, oh, well, I did what the sign told me to do, right? And that was kind of my response. It was very cold death stares for the rest of the interaction. It did not go well. But we can have fun.
I also had, speaking of, now we're just ranting. I went to a similar kiosk. I'm actually going to assume it's the same kiosk just based on the fact that we both live in town.
Sure.
And I follow the directions on the thing, and I input my name. And of course, it did not have my name correct in the system. So I put my name in, and they're like, "We don't recognize you." And then I talked to the person behind the counter, and they're like, "Frank?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" I might get some random person's medication. But yeah, this has been a good interaction so far.
Just give me something. Just give me drugs. Whatever they are.
Or in lieu of that, and this is not medical advice, by the way, because I am not a medical doctor and also not serious, but maybe some beer for that, Nate. Tell us about Antifragile.
Oh, man. Now you know what the ticket is. Antifragile Brewing on East Calder Way is the best beer in State College. It is the best atmosphere in State College if you are with friends, family, what have you. Anytime you're in downtown State College and want to get a drink, it is the place to go. Our friendly face Todd back there pouring drinks. They have like the best assortment, cornucopia of selections, right? They brew everything in-house. You've got IPAs, you've got hazies, you've got imperial stouts, which feedback for you, T. Frank, last week, they agree with me. Not for the summer. Not the time for it. I know. But as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube,
I'm going to have to buy them and store them throughout the year. Like, just buy them in bulk in the fall.
You can't do that. You can only drink their beer on site.
Damn.
Until their canning operation and second location gets going, which if you are down there, again, on East Calder Way, plenty of parking. Do not make parking an excuse. Get down there. Look at all these happy people. They also make mixed drinks, and kombucha is there. And then John's outside is cheesesteaks, which are also, not coincidentally, the best cheesesteaks in State College. It is a place, like, this is the one thing that I don't think I say enough about Antifragile, but wish I did. It is a place that cares, just deeply cares, right, about the product that they are serving, the experience that you have, and not to throw shade on State College, but there's a lot of places that don't do that, right? And so
I also think it shows that they care about the community. Like, they're at all of the events in the summer. They support this show, and we want to support them. This is a local show. Nate, Fitz, myself, we all live here in town. Ryan and Greg can't say anything about them, but we live here, and we want to support local businesses. So we make it a part of your game day weekend. Go hang out at Antifragile. Tell them we sent you, and drink really good beer. That's the good thing, is like, you don't even have to do it as just like a favor to us. You get something out of it, which is awesome beer and an awesome atmosphere. Also, one of the things we're very proud of is BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and all the great work we do. We're going to be talking about things from practice that we wrote about last week. Nate Bauer's numerous articles this weekend outlining the conversations he had. I had a practice notebook afterwards, and there was a lot of observations, a lot of notes from a really good section of practice, which we're going to get to here in just 1 second. But you can subscribe right now. Your Blue White Illustrated membership starts at just $1 for the first week, and we'll throw in a complimentary year of access to The Athletic. So check us out at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Time for Penn State football practice.
You gotta win, goddamn you! You gotta win!
Let's get into it, Nate. First off, I want to get your assessment because we have practice coming up tonight. I'll get into some of the highlights here of what we saw, literally and visually what we saw. But where are we in camp right now? Because practice is coming up tonight, Tuesday. I think it's actually this afternoon. The times are changing everything as well. Yeah. So where are we in the schedule of, we've gone through 2 calendar weeks, but we're kind of rounding into this halfway point, believe it or not, of training camp. So what should fans expect going forward from this point?
Yeah, it is almost game week, right? And by game week, I mean they extend it to 8 or 9 days, 10 days. And so the schedule is this week, Tuesday, that there's a media availability, and then Tuesday next week there's media availability. And crafty me being around the block a few times here, they love to schedule that last Tuesday, because after the media availabilities is when they inform players and their families where they are on the depth chart. Right. So James Franklin, in that last interview opportunity of the preseason before actually getting into game week, loves to say, well, I'd love to tell you, but we like to have those
we haven't had those conversations. Yeah, we haven't had any of those conversations yet intentionally.
Yeah. So so that's fine. I would anticipate, I believe there should be one more scrimmage this weekend, but they're in it, right? There's still opportunity for some shuffling. Some of the feedback, some of the things that I've been made aware of include some different looks on the offensive line. I think if you guys,
we'll get into that.
Yeah, right. And if you watch the BTN and some of the stuff that they did last week on their campus stop, you saw some of that, right? You saw some different looks and switching guys around and trying to, yes, they want to have a great idea of who the starting 5 are going to be left to right. Warranted, granted. But let's be real. I think they have a pretty good idea of what that is. I think they've had a pretty good idea. They returned
4 starters. There's some clarity in how that's going. And I guess that's the point where I was thinking of the last 2 weeks and what we've seen so far. When it comes to Penn State football's approach to the beginning of camp, this is the experimental time. This is when Penn State is trying to do those things because there is time to find these things out at the beginning of camp. So moving the offensive line around, playing guys at different positions, maybe switching some things up for practice. When you are in the first 2 weeks of training camp, that's when you're doing all those things. Heading into the second half, now things get more serious. The find out has happened for the most part, and now they're going to put guys in the positions that they want to see more, which also is why I think we've seen more one-on-one stuff. Early in the chat, who was it? Gavin says, the people want to see one-on-one receivers and corners.
Sure.
So do we. Yes, we would love to see that. We don't get to choose what practice we get to. It's like, you know what? No, I'm not gonna show you that stuff to that. We're not gonna get into that. We got to see 2 active periods of, I think, really informative contact when it came to the offensive line and then defensive line last week, and then the first week, linebackers and tight ends. So a lot of run game stuff we've seen, and I think that's pretty informative. But for the offensive line, this is the part that I found very interesting. As you mentioned, moving guys around, mirroring the line, left is at right, right is at left. But the position switching and Anthony Donko were the main things that I thought were the most illuminating when it came to how the plan has gone. Because we get to see, and you're going to see here in just a minute, when the starting unit is together, he plays guard. When the second string unit is together, he plays tackle. So the idea that he's moving full-time to guard, I don't think is actually true. I think he's going to play both positions this year. So he's the starting guard and the backup right tackle. And also Cooper Cousins is the starting guard in certain situations. There's a lot going on. And here's the thing, Nate. I don't know, if you just saw him here on screen, how you keep Cooper Cousins off the field, because my goodness, does he look awesome. I don't know that I've seen a more physically impressive offensive lineman in terms of just so well put together. He had his shirt rolled up during practice when we were there, and he's an offensive lineman, right? So he's got a little extra body mass, but if you're paying attention, you see the ab muscles. You can see definition throughout his torso. This dude is strong. He's lean for 6'6", 310 or whatever he is, and he moves just so well. So I don't know how they're going to go through those three players at that position, but there's going to be some sort of rotation. It's the three-man weave is what I've been calling it this year.
It's kind of the same build up every year. Maybe it's a little bit different this year because honestly, I can remember 3 years ago, Phil Troutline saying, if we can play 10, we'll play 10. But they didn't play 10 3 years ago. Could they play?
They talked about playing 6 before.
Year?
Yeah. So that's the thing. Right. So that's the thing is in the past we've talked about they had JB Nelson as a swing tackle and like he could play either position. He's going to be involved. And then was he? I mean, sort of involved, but in those big moments, we knew the starting five. This year, I think there's a genuine question about that right side of the line in the biggest moments. Who's going to be on the field? I don't know that they're going to have a solid five. I think that 6 is absolutely going to be on the table. And then to your question, 7 or 8, like when it comes to meaningful plays in meaningful games, who's out there?
Yeah, it's fascinating on the offensive line. It's fascinating at corner. Those are 2 spots where they traditionally go heavy with the same starters. Those guys get a ton of reps. They always finish at the top of the depth chart, at the top of the rep count. Last year, Vega, number 1 on all offensive snaps. Nick Dawkins, number 2. Drew Shelton, number 3. Sal Wormley, number 6. And Nolan Rucci, number 8. And that wouldn't have been the case if Donka's there, right?
Right.
So now, granted, you can make a case that had Donka been involved at the end of the season, it probably would have been 6 of the top 9 offensive players in terms of snap counts, which is an expansion, right? Instead of 5, you got 6. But now I think the question that's being asked is, okay, is there a place for 7? Is there a place for 8? And again, feedback, take it for what it's worth at this point, but it sounds like, they're moving in that direction. They're gonna find ways to get these guys on the field, including some heavy packages, right? Like they're gonna put a bunch of offensive linemen out on the field and just cram it down people's throats.
Yeah, James Hughes asked any chance they're going to go to a 4 tight end set this year. If you're going to 4 tight ends, you're doing 6 offensive linemen first because you're going to be running out of that formation. I understand tight ends are eligible receivers and all the like, but there is a certain diminishing returns if you're going to go to 4 tight ends. And I don't know if you're kidding or not, but it is in the realm of possibility. I don't put it past Andy Kotelnicki to go 4 tight ends, but I think 6 offensive linemen is going to be a serious set for this team. Mech Engineer talks about, we never talk about who the backup center is. Well, that's TBD because there is the long-term answer to that and there is the short-term answer to that. And right now, Venga Ioane is the primary backup center. He works behind Nick Dawkins with the starting unit when the centers go to work with the quarterbacks and running backs on handoffs and snaps and things like that. So there is no question who will play this year. There is a question in my mind about who is the long-term player to replace Nick Dawkins next year. Now, there's a number of guys, including Cooper Cousins, that are a part of that conversation. So the reason we haven't talked about it is because there's not really any new information. There's not really anything as far as... I don't think knowing Venga Ioane is the number 1 backup there helps us learn what's the future of that position. Because the primary backup, like when we watch them, just the centers, is Dominic Rulli. And, he's a fine player, but I don't think that's going to be the plan going forward when you have so many talented offensive linemen they've recruited and developed over the years. The other aspect that I thought was interesting watching Penn State at practice this past week was the passing game, but primarily the run after catch emphasis among the skill position players. You're watching here, if you're watching on YouTube, going through some of the highlights, they're doing tackle breaking drills or tackle evasion drills. One of the things they kept emphasizing was be creative with it. If guys were just given a simple cut off the yoga ball, is fine, but they wanted to see something a little bit different. So emphasizing creativity, emphasizing tackle breaking, and making these players earn yards after contact, all of them, quarterbacks included, is a real emphasis that we didn't see last year from this group in particular. I think this is an influence of Stan Drayton that's going to go beyond the running backs to receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, to the whole group. There was one we're not going to see here, but somebody threw a ball at Trevor Pena's head. I don't know if it was intentional or not. They might have bounced it, and it like grazed his helmet. And to his credit, to react to it, he ducked under it, and it would have felt like a reasonable chance for him to break a tackle if somebody tried to come and take his head off.
Sure.
But I don't think anyone's going to be trying to tackle the top of his helmet in those situations. But just to point out, they're looking for more dynamism out of the offense and the skill position players. The last thing is that having watched the linebackers the last 2 weeks, Nate, they look really good. And physically really good, athletically really good. And I just want to point out Anthony Specca. Anytime I see him play football, this is really impressive. So that linebacker depth, to me, I'm looking at this linebacker group, and on paper, we had a lot of questions. But wherever they play, they got talent there. And that was one of the biggest questions about this team, taking us all the way back to our first conversation about AP Top 25. These linebackers look pretty good. And not just that they're athletic or that they're talented. There's some light bulb coming on for some of these younger guys, it just seems. And so that's just, I want to couch that with only a couple times I've seen a couple of players. It's not for the whole group, that kind of conversation.
It is, and I think I mentioned it on last week's show, the conversation I had with Jim Knowles at preseason media day, but I feel like that's a point to hammer home. It's not just the talent, it's, okay, with Amari Campbell being what he appears to be and maybe even being a little bit better than they thought he was going to be, that changes things. Not significantly from all right, you're going to throw out the script, but it gives you more options. It gives you different ways to play things that they're going to see throughout the season in the Big Ten. Look, and I know I'm reading the chat here, but like Iowa, you're probably going to want 3 linebackers on the field in that game.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? You're going to want to have some of those options. And I think that there has been an assertion or an assertiveness out of that linebacker group this preseason that will pay dividends for Penn State in the fall.
There is a certain... James Franklin talked about not wanting to lose the player they lost in June, meaning not wanting to lose Tamir Robinson. But I know you've kind of echoed this, and we've talked about around it, but they may have found a better player in Amari Campbell. They may have found a guy that Tamir Robinson had unbelievable potential, but there was still a lot of rawness about him playing linebacker. There's still a lot of thinking going on where those traits weren't necessarily showing up. Amari Campbell showed up pretty quickly and has showed up in a big way from an impression standpoint from all the buzz and feedback we've got. So you've got, I think, legitimately, how many linebackers do you think, kind of with the offensive line conversation, how many are you counting kind of in pencil, kind of on your imaginary depth chart? How many are going to play this year in important snaps for you?
Well, let's go through it. Tony Rojas, yes. Dom DeLuca, yes. Mari Campbell, for sure.
I have a messed up hand. I can't do 3 very well.
Yeah. Some names are escaping me. I need to get the roster up here real quick.
Keon Wiley?
Maybe. Specca's the name that was escaping my brain there.
So 3.5, 4.5?
Kari Jackson has to be part of the conversation. Tash has been
interesting.
A name that has been discussed, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's been impressive, in some of the situations we've seen him. He plays faster than you would think a freshman would play. I
mean, I think that you're looking at 5 minimum with Wiley if Tash and Kari play, right? Look, we get into the same situation every single year where it's like, how do you break down the reps? And there's always a projection of more participation than there are reps available.
Yeah.
Every single year.
Yeah.
And so, we always get asked about receiver, how many catches they're going to have at the end of the year, how many touchdowns for Singleton and out, all that stuff, carries, whatever. There's just not that many plays in a college football game, especially with some of the recent rule changes. So I do think though that they are working with more talent and reliability, dependability at linebacker than maybe they anticipated going into camp.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I've landed, tentatively speaking, not knowing necessarily what the high end of this is, but I think the number and the participation count of players that can participate is higher than I expected. And then it comes down to who's most deserving and how many players do we truly trust to be out there, as opposed to who looks good when you're in practice or when you're doing things in drills, as opposed to it's live. Like, live football is very different. Beach Wine Guy says, crazy, a few months ago, many said linebacker was a weakness. It was one of the perceived weaknesses of this roster, and I think they've done a good job of developing. Plus, like, it does, your prior convictions on Tony Rojas and Dom DeLuca absolutely shade how you feel about the linebacker room. Nate and I are much more positive. We were arguing about who was first in on Tony Rojas last year. That's where we are in this conversation.
I want to add one thing, which is the curveball to all of this is the schedule and how that may impact or like
how many blowouts do they get? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, it's how many blowouts and how much. I'm always interested in this, and I don't know that I've ever gotten a straight answer, or the media has ever really gotten a straight answer, is when you hear James Franklin talk about, sometimes his position coaches don't put players in, they don't go to the depth as soon as they should. That sounds like his decision, is it right?
I always thought that was his decision. That's how I viewed it. Yes. So that was an interesting comment. I'm glad you brought that up because I had always assumed that was James Franklin, and he had a rule of 3 touchdowns or whatever, how many points ahead you are, so that players, you didn't have a comeback chance for the opposing team.
I think that there are situational element. That he likes to have the starters out to start the second half. That has been long established. Excuse me. But
I've got to get you a cough button.
I know. But there is, to my thinking, based again, just kind of reading tea leaves, I think he's going to push. I think the program is going to push to have that plan, especially before the non-conference games, saying, look, there is an urgency to getting ahead for Penn State early in these games, to building comfortable leads, and then to absolutely prioritizing as much as literally anything else, getting the depth in, getting those reps, developing those players, because they do firmly believe, and I think it bared out that way last year, what the toll is of a 16-game season. And if you're in this, if you're going to play this many games, you need those bodies. And so not only do you need those bodies,
and importantly, taking those reps off of those other players, your starters, early in the year, so that you don't get unnecessary wear against teams that you've defeated, right? And you're just kind of grinding out a win.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I'm always interested, because I think back on when did Villanova last play at Penn State? Was it 2021?
21. Yes, 21.
Right? And that was a game that was closer than it should have been into the third quarter, maybe late in the third quarter. And it was like, that's the criticism, right? Is taking care of business against the teams that you should take care of business against, because it has a trickle-down effect on everything else when you don't do that. Like there has to be a sense of urgency to absolutely annihilating Nevada and Florida International.
That has been the problem of even good Penn State teams because of, and I'll say this, because of the way the offense works, because of the run game focus and not having as many explosive plays, downfield plays, they haven't been able to put the dagger in early. They haven't been able to win a game in the second quarter in situations where they have the opportunity, the talent, and the obvious ability to do so. That's a great segue into what we're going to talk about with Stan Drayton in between the lines. But before we do that, Ryan here helping me out. He says only 195 people. There's 195 people watching. Actually, now there's over 200. Only 30-ish likes. If you want to, please like this video. Here's the thing. It's absolutely free, and I won't tell anybody. I noticed this, Nate. Sometimes I'm watching a video, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to like that because I don't want the algorithm to know or I don't want anybody else to know. It's like, well, the algorithm already knows you're watching this. The only thing it does is helps us out. So please help us out, like the video, and if you haven't yet, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. We are on a tear now that it's football season. We got big dreams, big goals. I want to hit 20,000 subscribers before the season starts. We're only 3,000 away. That seems reasonable. The Nevada game should bring on the excitement and the interest for 3,000 subscribers, or whatever we get to by then. High goals, but we can't do it without you. No, I'm not. That's the thing. I wanted to be to 20,000 2 years ago. When we first kind of got going. But you take what you get and then you just keep one day at a time, 1% better every single day. I don't know how that works, but that might be exponential growth. Who knows? Anyway, here's Between the Lines.
They have both gotten reps with runs.
So, last time we did this, I was having the conversation with you, and you were saying some subtweeting of former players, maybe? You could interpret it that way. You could interpret Stan Drayton's answer about where Katron Allen and Nick Singleton needed to grow in their development as maybe doing the same thing about their old position coach. I don't know. That's why Nate's here. And here's the clip of Stan Drayton talking after practice on Thursday.
The instincts are there, but not necessarily the understanding of what they're doing. They were always reacting at a high level, at an elite level. Now it's time to anticipate. All right, in order to do that, you got to learn defense. You got to understand how your formation is going to set a defense and how that defense is going to fit that formation. You got to understand linebacker flow. You got to understand indicators and pass protection. All that stuff was not developed, right? So they had a huge learning curve as far as that's going, and we're trying to slow the game down. And to be quite honest with you, the game is just now starting to slow down for them on those things. So it was a huge learning curve of just taking their learning to the next level. To be elite, that's what it's got to be.
So the implication there would be that they were not coached on those particular details, but I also want there to be some reasonable interpretation. So, Nate, is that a fair read?
Yes, right.
Okay.
That it was. Here's my problem. I don't think he meant it as an absolute, that it wasn't ever developed. It's that it wasn't developed to the level that it needs to be for them to be. Right.
He did say it was very raw. He used very clear language in other parts of the clip of not developed, very raw. Now it's just starting to slow down. I guess I struggle to interpret it any other way. That's my problem.
Yeah. And look, it's there. It's right under the surface. You've seen the tweets from the guy that used. Look, I'm not going to say bad things about Jaywan Sider. I thought he was great at Penn State.
Yeah.
He has had some choice reactions on Twitter to certain things that involve both Penn State and Notre Dame this offseason. And so, I think that it's fair to say there's a little bit of, and again, even James Franklin's public comments this summer talking about how important it is to get new eyes, right, for Nick and Katron and the next step that those guys can take as running backs under Stan Drayton. The thing that I want to know, T-Frank, because I was having a conversation about this weekend. Did you and I have a conversation, not on camera, about this very thing before Stan Drayton started talking about it, or did we have it after Stan Drayton started talking about it?
So
I don't remember.
So here's the timeline of how all this plays out in my head. Stan Drayton's hired. I go and research Stan Drayton. I try to learn more about him. I find a coaching clinic where he did this at Texas during COVID, and he talked about this like very explicitly, understanding the defensive alignment, where the 3 technique is lined up, what that means for your run scheme, and how you need to anticipate all these. So like I had this information. We asked him about it during his introductory press conference. So it feels like the commingling of these things happened almost instantaneously. Yeah. And on top of that, James Franklin, I think his initial conversation was about these things of being complimentary to Jaywan Sider, but saying like, this is the kind of TRDL of this has been Jaywan was very good. This guy is probably better in terms of being a complete running back coach. That's my read between the lines of what James Franklin had to say this offseason.
I think that's fair. I think it's partially about growth specific to where those guys are in their career, right? That part of it is they had 3 years of development under Jaywan that was productive. They got better. They did make strides.
Yes.
But how much more? And it's funny because you can hear Andy Kotelnicki alluding to it in some of his comments this offseason about how much harder it is for coaches during preseason camp to actually coach up the guys that are really good. It's so easy to focus your attention as coaches on younger players because there's such a broad room for them to develop. Now it's about finding wins in the margins. And I think that it is fair to say, very fair to say, Penn State believes wholeheartedly that Stan Drayton is unlocking that out of these guys more than Jaywan had been able to at Penn State. Again, though, Tifa, were we not talking about how Nick Singleton talked during preseason media day about drilling open field moves, right? Like that's all the jump cut and the spin move and all the stuff that doesn't happen and he gets tackled in the open field. And it's again, it's beating a dead horse territory. Wasn't your comment to me that it wasn't about the physical, it's about knowing where the defender is coming from. It's about having an understanding, an intimate understanding of the defense that those guys just haven't had. They or at least for Nick, when he's in those situations.
So I want to make sure that there's some fair conversation here. Jaywan Sider did have, in his time at Penn State, we did have these conversations about understanding the defense, but it was more about where's the safety coming from when you're in the open field, how do you anticipate where the safety's coming from, et cetera, et cetera. More about the second level as opposed to I need to understand the offensive game plan and the interaction like an offensive lineman. This is a different level of understanding where now you are anticipating where the tackle's coming from because you understand the flow of the linebacker and the flow of the safety, because the front will tell you a lot of times which way the safeties are going to rotate. So you don't have to be waiting and looking into the secondary. If you understand the alignment and your front and your run call, you can understand I now need to know I need to hit this way. Like I get through the line here and then I need to break this way. Yeah. And that allows you, it's anticipation versus reaction. And I actually wrote about this. That's the difference in football. If you're reacting to something, 4 out of 10 times you might make a spectacular play and break a tackle. If you're anticipating and now it's a 50-50 proposition or 60% of the time you're getting extra yards, whether you're falling forward, whatever it might be, that's a massive difference. That's a superstar difference. And again, going back to our previous conversation, how do you get more linebackers in the game? How do you get more defensive linemen in the game? How do you blow teams out? Nick Singleton knows that the safety's rotating from a 2 high to a cover 3, and he's going to run opposite of that direction once he gets to the second level, and now it's a 60-yard touchdown instead of a 10-yard gain, and you're up 14-7 after your second drive. That's how all of this interconnects. Also, how this interconnects is that this show is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Carries all the gear you need from the top brands, all at prices you'll love. And now shopping at Academy is even more convenient than ever. They offer free assembly on in-store purchases of most bikes and grills, plus free and easy curbside pickup on academy.com orders. Want to save more every day? Open and use Academy Sports and Outdoors credit card to get 5% off future purchases when you are approved. Save money and time at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there. Go ahead.
Is it too late for me to quote Franklin?
No, go for it.
My summer interview, because I think it fits fairly seamlessly. Quote, Nick, I think sometimes your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. He's always been so fast that I think he's relied on that speed. And when you talk about emphasizing things, I don't feel like that was emphasized enough to him, that you can't just rely on your speed at this level. So things that we've been able to work on and emphasize with him all spring, all summer, and we'll continue to do. And then during training camp, I think those two guys are going to have a chance that once the game starts, people are going to be like, they look different. And it helps that they have a chance to play behind one of the better O-lines in college football, blah, 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 blah. But
this is the how. This is the how behind how they look different, or I should say the why. This is the why behind that particular quote. Because it's not just about, and yes, certain players are more confident and comfortable and able to use different techniques, right? So if you're a tall defensive lineman, a swim move is more usable for you than if you're a shorter guy. If you're a high cut running back, you might not be jump cutting all the time. But Nick Singleton can do it, but is he doing it in a situation where he's using that move appropriately because he knows all the things that are happening? This is the break big plays that I think Stan Drayton brings to this particular group, because it's a complete level of understanding in the run game, which I don't know, like it's both not surprising and surprising that those things, you don't naturally stumble upon those if you're a football player. Like, I guess that's the part where, are you so siloed and focused on your job that you're not picking up things that the offensive line is being taught in practice? That part I find interesting. Beck Engineer, he says, best PSU coverage available. Thank you very much for the Super Chat donation. If you want to donate to the channel, those are always open, but we don't require those to be a part of the show here. Talking to you in the chat. Let's move on, though, because we've got a couple of other things. These are a little bit less read between the lines and more explain the situation. James Franklin here. We had a question in the chat earlier about the defensive tackle rotation. Pretty much spells it out.
I think you guys know there's been a lot of talk and buzz around Xavier. Blanding is twitchy and as athletic as that we have at the position, and is really taking a step right now. And then there's a group of like 3 guys that are battling for those next 2 spots. I probably should have included Wafel too. Wafel is the other one that is doing some really nice things. And then there's that group of 3 guys that are all battling. Liam, Cook, Randy are all battling kind of, for those next spots. So we feel good probably about those top 4 to 5 guys. And then there's a battle for that 6th defensive tackle.
So Penn State likes to have a 2.5 deep, Nate.
Yep.
And just like linebacker, let's do some simple math. Durant, 1. Ford, 2. Gilliam, 3. Those are the top 3.
Yep.
Blanding has now ascended into that top group, according to James Franklin and what we've talked about. And, by the way, our great reporting at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com before camp. 5-ish. Owen Wafel, he's kind of in between that group where he's stood out. He's done good things enough to get mentioned, but not part of that lump there at the end. So Penn State's got 5 defensive tackles, it sounds like, or at least 4.5, where they want to have 5 at a 2.5 deep. You're giving me some frumping noises.
I think he just forgot to put him in there. I think Wafel is the clear 5th, and
so there's 5. We are.
And they're trying to find a 6th. I mean, I think if I heard that correctly, which I think I did, I think that's what he said, was they're looking for a 6th because they got the top 5. And now that doesn't mean that there aren't tiers within the top 5. I mean, I think fairly clearly the 3 at the top are ahead. Maybe Blanding is pushing a little bit there to get into that
Interesting.
3 role. But yeah.
That's
5.
a big development because they've been very high on Xavier Gilliam. So, and you know how I feel about Alonzo Ford in terms of I think he's an excellent football player. I think he's very talented. But coming off a knee injury for a defensive tackle who used athleticism as part of his repertoire, because he's not like a tank. His lower body's kind of skinny for a guy his size. I'm concerned of how he's going to hold up early on, especially. So if you got a true 4 top defensive tackles, it feels like this is a pretty good unit for Penn State. Again, linebacker, defensive tackle, 2 of the weaknesses of this team, doesn't feel very weak at this point. Is that? I mean, I know that was kind of a statement, but
yeah,
you
no,
have a follow-up thought?
The only thing I was going to add is I think some of the November-ish injuries, the serious ones, there may be an easing into process, right? I think that's a fairly reasonable expectation to set. Is why tax those guys, right? It's ramping up, and I know everybody's cleared, and I think you're going to play the clip right now about injuries, but it's kind of been, as James Franklin is about to say, a situation in reverse.
Yeah, and let's get to that right now.
Yeah, it's just unusual. Usually you start and you're in good shape and it grows, and we're going in the opposite direction. So we've made some modifications to our practice. We do that every year based on Andrew Nelson, our sports scientist, recommendations, as well as Chuck Losey and the coaches. So I think that's helped. We're out here a little bit shorter, not much shorter, but we're out here a little bit shorter. Reducing reps a little bit, not much, not significant. But yeah, so those guys just had to get cleared, and they've cleared. So we're going in the opposite direction, which is good and unusual for camp.
Nate.
Yep.
What do you make of that? Because I think there's some confusion about what he was saying at that point.
What's the confusion?
That there's some. I think it was more confusion on people didn't hear Greg's question during the press conference when we had it live, because there was a lot. I answered a lot of questions about that. Of what is the ramping up that's going on? What is the how is all of this worked out in practice?
Yeah. No, there were a lot of guys that Tony Rojas is probably the most obvious example, but guys who had stuff to clean up and or offseason surgeries, right? Whatever form the medical intervention took, there was medical intervention for a bunch of guys after last season. And, because of that, you are waiting. And again, this is not that familiar with the doctor procedure, but it seems to me that you're waiting on a clearance from a doctor, and doctors are evaluating practice by practice, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing tests, they're physical tests before every practice, after every practice. And as those benchmarks are cleared, you reach the final boss by being a full participant with no restrictions.
Right.
And so you don't get that opportunity to be cleared for contact until you've had the tag off, right? So it's just mirroring the trajectory of preseason camp in the first place, and in how it ramps up. And then
normally you start healthy. Yeah, normally you start healthy and then you lose bodies as you go throughout because guys get banged up or injured. Now the team is starting banged up and having to go a little slower, maybe not do as much stuff. But James Franklin even tried to say a little bit, but don't worry, we're definitely being intense during practice. There's always that fine line that people can't take your words the wrong way.
Can I just tell you, because this is maybe a window for viewers, listeners, but I always have anxiety talking during preseason camp about players definitively when it's been a week since we've seen them in person, because you just don't know. And I mean, like, if you're a Penn State fan, I'll do it on your behalf, like knocking on wood for all of these guys, right? But I'm not aware of any type of real significant setback, right? And I know that there have been some in past years in camp, but they have not had one, as far as I know, Tuesday at 10:56 a.m. To this point in camp.
So this here in the chat, and this is just because it makes me laugh, Joseph Joseph says, should have paid Abdul Carter what it took to keep him. So I just did a quick Google search of Abdul Carter's contract, and here it is. Give me 1 second. Add to page. They've changed some of the things here for me on this side. Okay, so Abdul Carter has a 4-year, $45 million contract, Nate. His base salary is $840,000. Okay, all right. His signing bonus was $29 million, $29.5 million. Guaranteed at signing, his rookie contract, $45 million. How much is the totality of Penn State's NIL spend? I mean, on the face value, the entire revenue sharing is half of what Abdul Carter was guaranteed at signing of $20 million. I don't think that there was a number they could have gotten to keep Abdul Carter at Penn State.
I think, and
am I crazy?
I don't want to break any news here, but I think Penn State is feeling very comfortable and confident in what they have at defensive end this preseason.
Tell me a little bit more, because the last thing we heard was Zariah Fisher, a little bit bumps and bruises here in camp. But are you saying the number one question we've gotten over at that isn't wide receiver related has been about the young defensive ends? So positive signs, positive buzz for the young guys?
Yeah, there's been some buzz. The youngster Chaz Coleman, little buzz.
Yeah.
Kamaju, little buzz, right? You've had some. Mason Robinson has gotten a couple of public nods. Jalen Harvey, they feel really good in the first play. With bumps and bruises aside, there is a feeling that Zariah Fisher is going to be very good for them this year, and with Nittany can be an excellent tandem at defensive end.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's just, as the kids say, letting the young guys eat, right? That's So
it's so funny.
Duke it out and
the offseason roller coaster that we go through with some of these freshmen, because Chaz Coleman, watching him as a senior last year and watching his highlight tape, I'm like, this dude's the truth. Oh my goodness. Like, if he's big enough, he could contribute next year was where I started with. And then you get some of the buzz of like, okay, let's put the freshman on the shelf for now until they prove something. And then early returns are, yeah, he looks great. We see him in the weight room. I don't think he fully knows how to lift properly yet. And then he gets on the football field and it's like, oh, what Nate just said. So you follow the stock report of guys like Chaz Coleman, because we're all learning this information together. And, it's responsible to learn new information as time goes on. But he's been one that I was initially very excited about, and then I kind of took a step back because I was probably too far ahead, and now it turns out I was just in the right spot to begin with. I'm always annoyed when I'm like, oh no, I was right about that. But I got nervous that I was out ahead too far.
No, you know what's happening, T. Frank.
This one from James Hughes. He says, is safety a concern in your eyes? Nate, how do you feel about the safeties?
I think they're going to be good, honestly. I think that there's a right conversation to have, and a tentativeness isn't the right word, but just it's okay for people to feel some level of cautiousness over whoever comes out of the King Mac Lane sweepstakes, right? Mm-hmm. Is you Zachy Wheatley has earned the buzz. I think that he the knack for the ball stuff, all the stuff that has followed him throughout his career.
Yeah.
Is rightful, and he showed it in the playoff. And if he can translate the playoff performance into a full season, he's going to be a pretty good draft pick next year, right? He like second, third?
Jair Brown vibes, I would say, because bigger, by the way, and that helps him, but bigger. Maybe the high end athleticism isn't there, but the instincts are so good that he makes up for it. I'm always interested in how teams value safety to begin with in the draft and then value athleticism at the position as a function of where you get drafted, because the draft is about EST, height, weight, speed, who's the biggest, fastest, strongest. And then after we get through those players that all can contribute right away, we think, who are the players that are best at football? And that's not exactly like a one-to-one thing. And I'm usually overvaluing Penn State's players because I think they're better at football. And then they go in the 5th round. And then that's, I guess, my concern about that is I thought Jalen Reed running a 4.49 and having good film, he would go in the 4th or maybe the late 3rd, and didn't quite make that as a draft pick. But
but
I think
they're saying he's a steal.
One.
He's a steal in Houston. Is that
right?
Did I see that tweet over the weekend?
He's got 2 pick sixes in camp last I checked, and so but to say that he's going to be a mid-round draft pick,
maybe not.
Right? But no. So this is the point: is like translatable skills. Absolutely, is going to play in the NFL. Will play in the NFL. Like, that's not the question. It's has the NFL and the draft process, which is different than who's good at football. How does that work out in their favor or not in their favor? And Wheatley is one of those guys that I think could go either way. I draft him in the mid rounds because he's perfect for the moment in what the NFL wants, which is 2 high safeties to play and keep a lid on big plays and still make plays on the ball. And I think he's the thing he's got to prove in my mind of where he improved last year was the tackling, making sure that's super consistent. Then he's a guy that can play at 3 levels of the defense.
I think also, there's a lot going on in this head of mine, but I think one of the vibes this offseason with Zaki has been the athleticism, right? He did work in the weight room and
all right,
speed work. So I think he's made some strides there. I think he could be, again, ditto, right? I think they feel pretty good about what they've got at safety. I don't mind fans doing a little pearl clutching over, Lane is still young. He's a kid, and King kind of lost the season last year, and lost the spring. So that's interesting. I'm
a little less concerned about King Mack just because when we have seen him, he's played so good. And this is something kind of going to the Chaz Coleman conversation is when he was recruited out of the portal, I thought of him more as a safety than in that nickel position. And then we hear they're going to play him in the nickel. So, okay, we go through that and then he gets hurt and we don't see any of it. And now he's back at that boundary position. That's where he's played best in his Penn State career. That's where he played best at Alabama. So I guess the concentration of safeties, those top 3, at the pure safety positions, not at the nickel slot position, makes me feel better about that. That I think those 3 guys can play kind of like that right tackle situation, and things will work. I was a little nervous about King Mack playing corner. I wanted to see it. I wanted it to work because I thought that'd be the most entertaining to watch that dude play man coverage and hit people. But it seems that's not the plan anymore.
I mean, Jim Knowles said it, right? There's no mystery here. Like sometimes we like to kind of like, well, maybe they feel like there's a little bit more depth and strength at corner. No, he said it. You just said it. So you're gonna see more corners on the field than safeties. That's how they're gonna attack that. And really, they've got 6 corners. Just wrote about that over the weekend as well.
It's a good time.
It's gonna be a good defense. We should stop.
Yeah.
Let's stop. We're just talking.
Stop the show. Well, okay. That was the next thing. we've got places to be, but one of those places later today is training camp. So give people what they can go and find this afternoon over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com from you and from us.
Yeah, we've got it all. And don't hold me to this because sometimes I mess it up. 4:45.
I don't have the. I just know that I'm going to be paranoid about when it is because it's
too.
at 3:45 a different day. So I was going to go look it up. I was trying to look it up while you were talking, which is why we went a little longer. But I can't find it. So this afternoon, TBD. But BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We are on our details, guys. We know what's going on.
Listen, I would like to absolve myself of responsibilities here. I get the emails after, like they come in late. And now you're
just
gone.
Keep going. Just keep going.
So, I get emails late, and so I don't know where to be and when to be there. But I do know this. If you are a Blue White Illustrated subscriber, we will have lots cooking for you this afternoon. On the message board, we do live updates in a running thread from camp, talking about all the stuff that we're seeing. We immediately follow that with practice observations from kind of all of us, all hands on deck for guys that are there. And then they follow that with James Franklin in the early evening and an assortment of coaches and players that we will all be getting feedback from. So, this is for preseason Super Bowl, right? This is, we got to treat it like that. And
on a day like that, I'm holding Nate after class. So we got to get going. Thanks. This has been an awesome show. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Nate, your insight and your charm and your wit are always appreciated here on the show. We will be back tomorrow with Greg. We'll have a recap of practice, talk about what we saw. And then Thursday, we got the recruiting show. Peter Bork's a Michigan Wolverine. I didn't see that coming. The quarterback dominoes are falling. What does all that mean? Ryan Snyder's going to talk to you about that on Thursday and a bunch of other stuff. So subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel so you don't miss any of it. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for watching.